And do all of you kind of know each other, or you're all just kind of, some of you meeting each other for the first time here?
Yes.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, we're going to get started here because I know we don't have a whole heck of a lot of time, but I want to kind of tell you who I am, how we're going to spend our hour together, and to kind of put it into context, because 1 hour is often kind of tough to get into a lot of things. But I'm Denise Trevino. My official title for the Diocese of Texas is Missioner for Intercultural Development. And so what that means is that I get the great privilege of going out and working with over 160 churches, 80 schools, 12 different nonprofits, and basically anything or anyone that falls under the umbrella of the Diocese of Texas. And for those of you that are not that familiar with the Diocese of Texas, we're pretty large. We cover a 300 square mile radius, and so we do a lot of traveling. We're in and out a lot in all the different cities. And one of my main jobs that we're going to be kind of touching on a little bit today is I go out and I really work with people on what it means to be a culturally competent leader in today's world. So if I were to ask any of y'all, so I don't know, what are some of the skills you would think that it takes to be a culturally competent leader in today's world? And there is no right, wrong, well, there might be some wrong answers, but there's really no right or wrong answers. Just kind of blurt it out as you get
Open mind.
Open-minded.
Humility.
Humility.
Bilingual.
Bilingual.
Or multilingual.
Multilingual.
Innovative.
Innovative.
Listening and observant.
Listening and observant.
Friendly.
Friendly.
Inclusive.
Inclusive.
Willing
Yeah.
to be told you're wrong.
Willing to be told you're wrong. Okay? Yeah. So all of those, every single one of those are many things that would maybe encompass what it means to be a culturally competent leader. And I teach a program called the Fertile Ground Institute. Excuse me. And it is a miniature version of what, are any of y'all familiar with the Dr. Eric Law? Okay, so it's really based off of his work that we do in our diocese. And normally if you were to take the full program, it's 6 days, we go 14-hour days, really intense work, and we're really kind of like exploring what it means, what can I do to kind of hone in my skills on what it means to be just a more effective, culturally competent leader. So
What's the
today
last
we're going
name
to get, what's that?
Dr. Eric, what?
Law.
Dr. Reverend Eric Law, So today we're going to look at like an hour of that, right? So I say that because I want you to have a context that when we talk about cultural sensitivity, it's such a huge topic. I do not consider myself an expert at it. I'm not sure if there's really any one expert out there, because I think that it's ever changing. I think that our world is constantly changing. Our environments are changing. The people we meet are changing. And so my skills are forever weaving in and out of kind of what I need to use. What tools can I pull out of my pocket? What do I need to be knowing here? But I kind of want to share with you something that has really helped me whenever I have to engage other people. Because even though you are all kind of doing something a little different, some of it overlaps, there's one common denominator in everything that everyone in this room is doing, which is connection with people in some way. It might even be digital. It might be, whatever, in person, a lot more relational. Whatever that is, there's a connection happening here. And when we deal with cultural sensitivity issues, we usually find that where we get into the biggest bumps, when we have these cross-cultural experiences, is in our communication. And so we're going to explore that a little bit today, and hopefully we'll have a little fun. Everyone will get to explore what kind of communicator you might be, and you're going to get a chance to really learn what it's like to have to communicate with someone from the complete opposite polar communication pattern that you have, okay? And so I just want to say briefly, to put it into context, how I got into this work is I grew up in a bicultural home. My father is Mexican, and my mother is American. My father is from Santa Barbara, Chihuahua. My mother is from a little town called Idaho of 300 people. You might know where it is, that northern Texas, right? And so one half of my family does not speak a word of English, and one half of my family does not speak a word of Spanish. Entonces yo soy mexicana, ¿verdad? And I've navigated the world looking like white girl, right? Walks into the room, and that's really what people see, and yet really I was raised incredibly Hispanic. So all of my cultural norms, my language, the foods I eat, the things that I do are really rooted in my Hispanic culture. And yet, right, I've also lived in a white world. So this work kind of came into me by accident working for the church, because they were looking into kind of expanding their vision on what it meant to live into our Christian formation through a more multicultural lens. I stumbled onto it quite by freak accident and in a room with you guys. And so, without further ado, I want to kind of get into this now. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to hand out, if you all could just take one and pass it along, I'm going to hand out a sheet here that is going to be breaking down the different comparisons on what it means to be. And you know what? I'm going to turn the light off because I think y'all will be able to see it. Is that better? Can you see it better?
Yes.
Okay. You might not see it on your paper well, though. Does everybody have a pen or something to write with? Mm-hmm. All you're going to have to do is a check mark, and so that's the most you'll have to do. But how this is going to work is I'm going to take y'all through a process that talks about 2 different communication styles, okay? They are really defined as a low context and a high context. And because we don't normally speak this language every day and use these kind of words, I want to explain what I'm talking about when we're talking about low context. When you hear me talking about people that have a low context style, right, and I'm going to be giving you lots of examples to kind of help you figure out if that's where you fall, I'm talking about people that have a style that means a lower amount, right, a lesser amount of content that they need to be comfortable in their communication style. This will all make sense as I go through a lot of the examples. On the flip side, when you hear me talking about people that are coming from a high context style of communication, I'm talking about people that need a larger amount of content, okay? They just require more information, more time, more communication in order to be at their most comfortable level in communication. This is all I'm going to be giving you all lots of examples in a little while. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be flip-flopping from low to high. As I say something that sounds like you, I want you to put a check mark on that side. So if I say something that just kind of sounded like you, I want you to put a check mark right here. If you run into a situation where both of them were dead on you, right? Check both sides. Now here's the trick with this though. When you begin to say, well, that could be me, that could be me, that could be me, that could be, you're gonna put check marks everywhere, right? What the real challenge here is I want you to be able to really think about what is your go-to comfort level. Now a lot of people will say, oh, well, I'm different at home than I am at work. So that's not what we're getting at here. What I want you to think about is if you didn't have to alter your behavior in any way and really could communicate in the style that you like, that's most comfortable to you, what is your norm? Okay? So let me get started and flesh some of this out and stop me at any point if you have questions, okay? People that are coming from a low context communication style really navigate things and view things as individuals. You and me, David and I, Patsy and myself, right? And what I mean, let me give you an example of that. You ever been in a group of people and someone says, where do you guys want to eat tonight? Right? And some people say, oh, I really want to go for Mexican, right? The question was posed, right? And a person spoke up, right? I'd like to see Mexican. I'd like to have Mexican food tonight, right? Okay, that would be a low context style of communicating. If that same question were posed to a group of high context people, their answer would sound more like this. I don't know, what do you guys want to do? Right? Neither's good or bad, right? Neither is one. And that's the other thing I really want to stress in here, is that at the end of this exercise, and when we process all this in the next hour, you're going to realize that both are equally important. There will be no one is better than the other. So as you're doing this, don't be thinking, oh God, I don't want to be that person, I would have marked that, right? Flesh it out how you honestly are, and then you'll see how that's of great value. But how quickly those were so different, right? Same question, but two people go about that very differently. I want Mexican. I don't know, what do you guys want to do? Structured messages are very, very important for low context people. They tend to put a lot of emphasis on the written form and a lot of value in the written media. For example, contracts. Low context people love things in writing. They want A, B, C down on paper. They want to make sure that we all know what we're doing on paper. They're very big on emails. They're very big on getting information out via texting. So they're just very big on the written emphasis, okay? Keeps things neat, keeps it precise. Tell me what I need to do. It's all in a contract, A, B, C, D, E. Got it, okay? High context people, though, they really prefer relaying things orally and in person, okay? So, if I'm in an office environment, right, and I gotta get information out to people in my office, are you the one that like kind of shoots everything off via email, maybe? Or texting someone down the hall? Or are you the person, if you're high context, you're gonna get up from your office and you're gonna go downstairs or wherever and you're gonna relay that information? Or you're gonna pick up the phone and talk to the person about it? I don't know, what feels more like you? Okay? Linear logic. Low context people also are very big on linear logic. So I put here A plus B equals C. It is the next logical step, right? An example of that is, hey Bob, can you go outside there and pick up the yellow folder and bring it back to us? I asked somebody to go get something, bring it back. Real simple, right? Low context. You don't need any more information than that. That would be low context. That's your comfort level. However, if you're high context, it says spiral, but really what I like to think of it as weaving logic, right? It might be A plus B. Oh, let's go back and talk about A some more, and then we might jump to D. And I promise I'll tell a story in between, and then I'm going to go back to A. It's going to take me a lot longer to kind of get to that point. And an example of that would be, hey, Bob, can you go out and get that yellow folder, but on your way, don't forget to say hi to Mary. She's new to Forma. And you need to welcome her, and oh my God, check out the painting out there. It is awesome. It is, I wish I could buy that painting. And then on the form, don't forget to look at the yellow folder. Sarah's grandson did that picture. It's really, really pretty. Yeah, and then we're gonna be over here, but we may have lunch. Oh my God, I gotta tell you, whatever, right? So it kind of like, I asked the person to do the same thing, but I kind of like added a lot more information in there. And remember, this is not good or bad, better than the other. But I added more information in there than the person actually needed to go get the yellow folder and back. Okay? Storytelling is a very big piece of high context people. Low context people adjust to new situations very quickly. Moving and change is very easy. If your boss came to you, Dave, and said, hey, 2 weeks from now, I'm moving you to, I don't know, to Nebraska, right? What would be your first mode of operating? Right? Low context people would probably go into like, okay, I need to get my pen and paper out and I need to start making a list of everything I need to do, right? Boom, boom, I need to call the renters. Oh my gosh, I need to get my lease notice in. I need to find a place to live. I need to call a mover, blah, blah, blah. They're going to kind of kick into that. And when they arrive in that new place with change, it's a lot easier to adjust because one of the things that low context people are really, really good at is that they can get in there and because they don't rely on major communities to kind of like get all their information and kind of help them with that, they get in there and they just start kind of going into planning mode, right? They don't need to consult and talk to a lot of people about it. Move me and I'm good. I'm gonna like just slide right in and start my strategies of what I need to get done. And if you gave that same challenge to a high context person, it would not feel as comfortable. That adjustment would feel very disruptive to your life because one of the key factors that distinguishes a low context and a high context person is their social context for groups, right? So a high context person, right, is that they need time and they need to build up trust, right? So when they go into a new environment, suddenly they're kind of like, oh my gosh, well, I'm not going into strategy mode here. I need my relationships. Where are my groups? Where's this group over here? Where's that group over here? So it takes them a lot longer to really get adjusted to change in new situations. Low context people also really view things as conflict are between individuals and not with groups. So if I'm in a committee, let's say with a group of a lot of people, and a conflict arises, and just say only 2 people were having that conflict in the group, let's say Forma and whatever, double C or whatever is in the same room and a conflict comes up, is it Forma and this group? Or is it that person and that person? Well, a low context person would see them as, oh, Bob and Jane. Well, not if there's a Bob and Jane in here, I'm sorry, I'm not pitting you against one another, but if the conflict occurs, it'd be, two people, not this group and that group. But because high context people really have a broader navigation through their communities at large and through the groups, they would see it as the conflict occurred between the groups, not the individuals. Okay? Low context people deal with conflict by revealing opinions and feelings. So have you ever heard, you walk into a situation or with someone and you know there's some conflict, right? There's some uncomfortableness going on. And then you ask someone, is everything okay? Right? Low context will put it out all on the table. Have you ever heard someone say that? Well, let's just get it out all on the table. And they have no problem whatsoever that if they are feeling like something's not quite right with someone else, they have no problem approaching that individual, because remember, they're very individual oriented and go straight at trying to work that out, okay? They're not going to avoid it. They're not going to weave around that problem. They're going to go straight to where they feel the conflict is and kind of talk about, what their opinions are, what the feelings are, and not feel uncomfortable with that. High context people, though, if you ask that same question, is everything okay? How many of us have had this response? Well, yeah, everything's fine. And we clearly know it's not fine, right? That's classic high context. Because one of the key things a high context person will also do that a low context person doesn't do is avoid conflict. So instead of like going direct, I'm going to go like this. Where, it's like a crab, you travel sideways. Right? I'm going to maybe go talk to so-and-so about my, potential conflict that I'm having with someone. And it's not in the form of gossip. I don't want to portray it that way, but it's like I may talk about it over here. I'm processing, right? I may kind of, have this person kind of help me figure out how I should avoid, kind of like deal with that conflict. But my comfort level is definitely not to go straight up to the conflict and deal with it. So I'm going to avoid that and be like, no, everything's good. It's all fine. And it's not. Direct confrontational style, indirect non-confrontational style. So are you direct? Do you go straight to? Or are you indirect, non-confrontational? Low context people are also very fact-finding, mission-oriented, yes or no answers. So if so-and-so asks you a question in your work environment and they say, hey, did the cabin get repaired? And someone might say, no, not yet. Or, yes, it got repaired yesterday. I didn't add anything else to my answer, but a high context person would answer that like this. Hey, did the cabin get repaired? Yeah, Bob came out yesterday. Oh my gosh, it was pouring down rain. And by the way, the cabin is going to need an extra bed because this one is kind of not working real well. And we might want to look at the lighting over there because it's kind of dim in that area and the trees are kind of blocking the lighting. So they feel like there's more to the story that people need to know. And have you ever been in environments where you ask someone, like in a court situation, where you're only allowed to give a yes or no answer, right? Answer yes or no, right? Well, a low context person is going to be real good with that, right? Ask me a question, I gave you the answer, good to go. That's their comfort level. Whereas a high context person is going to be like, wait a minute, that's not a yes or no answer. There's more to the story, right? Because that bigger picture for them is important to the answer. It's not just yes or no. Which one do you gravitate to more often? Low context people are very highly goal-oriented. Give them the problem and they're going to give you a solution. So if I'm a low context person and you bring a problem to me, I'm not going to get on the phone and probably call 5 of you to talk about it. I'm probably not going to get on the 5 of you and feel like we need to have a committee meet about it. I'm going to get on it and go into like, what do I need to do about this and solve it, right? Super good working on my own. It's all good. But a high context person though, the result and the end is not as important as the relationships that you were building to get to that point. So if you bring a problem to me, I'm a high context person, my mode is going to be more like, you know what, I'm gonna talk to so-and-so about that, and maybe we should have a meeting about this to talk about it. I think it's good for us to get other people's opinions in on this, right? So I'm not gonna just go out there and just start solving it on my own. I really am going to want to talk to others to get their opinions, to make this more relational, and to work with one another, okay? So I hope you've been checking off what side you're at, because have all of you been checking off what side you think you're kind of the norm to? On the next page, I'm gonna turn on the light now here. Sorry. On the next sheet of paper, what I'd like, don't look at the bottom part, but the top part. What I'd like you to look at is I'm gonna have you figure out kind of where you fall on the continuum of communication styles. So, for those of you that checked everything in the left-hand side and didn't have anything in the right, you're a 1. How many of you fell in that category?
I only have one on the other side.
Okay, so you would be a 2. So if you checked almost everything on the left-hand side but have 1 or 2, maybe on the right-hand side, you're gonna be a 2. I want you to circle that number. For those of you that had almost dead center, they're both almost even, but maybe had 1 or 2 more on the left, you're gonna be a 3. For those of you that also had dead center almost even, but had maybe 1 or 2 on the right, you're going to be a 4. Okay? For those of you that had almost all of them on the right-hand side of high context, but maybe 1 or 2 on the left, you're going to be a 5. And then how many of you had all of them on the right-hand side? Okay, you're going to be a 6. Okay, great. So what I'm going to have you all do next is I'm going to divide you into 3 groups. How many of you fell under low context, which is our 1s and our 2s? Can you raise your hand? 3. How many of you fell under 3 and 4s? Okay, the vast majority of the group. And then how many of you fell under 5 and 6s? Okay, great. So what I'm going to have you do is also on your, actually, can I borrow one of those pages? So what I'm going to have you do is, for those of you that are a 1 and a 2, I'm going to have you all, you can stay in this room actually, and I want you to explore this question today, and I'm going to give everybody a chart with some markers, and then you're going to write out your answers, and then you're going to come back and present to the group, okay? So what you're exploring is, if you're on the low context side, what are 3 potential problems that you can anticipate when communicating with someone that's a 5 or a 6? That's the complete opposite of communication style, right? And I want you to also list out what self-adjustments do you think you can make, okay? Now, in order to avoid that conflict. So notice I didn't say, what could you change about somebody else, right? I want you to really explore, I don't know, what are some behaviors, what are some self-adjustments that I could make in order to avoid that kind of conflict, because someone else doesn't communicate like me, all right? So I want you to go explore that, and then if you are a 5 or a 6, and you're on the high end, I want you to explore that same question, but obviously from the opposite end. If you're a 5 and a 6, what are some potential problems you could anticipate when encountering people from a low context side of communication, right? And what self-adjustments could you make when encountering someone that's very low context? 3s and 4s, you have a very different assignment, okay? If you're in the middle of the continuum, what specific behaviors, communication skills, attitudes, and values would you emphasize when communicating with a person from a very high context and a very low context? Okay?
Can you read that again, please?
It should be on your
Is it on
paper.
there? Okay.
Yeah, it's on there, but if you're in the middle, what specific behaviors, communication skills, attitudes, and values would you emphasize? Meaning, would you really use when communicating with low context people, and how would that differ if you were communicating with someone with a high context style? Does everybody understand their assignments, what they're gonna work on in groups? All right, how about, and then what time is it right now? Okay, how about we check back in here at 11:30, Okay, so it gives you about, by the time you all find a place to work, it'll give you about 15 minutes. So we'll meet back here. How about our 1s and 2s stay in here? How about our 3s and 4s? And or y'all can go wherever you want actually, but just to make sure you're giving each other space. It's beautiful outside, so if y'all want to go find a little space outdoors, go for it. Just kind of, if somebody wants to stay in here.